morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tampa. My name is Candy Gale. I have been a member of this church for almost 30 years and am currently honored to be serving as the president of the Board of Trustees. I welcome you this morning and hope that here you may find peace, if peace is what you seek. If you seek to be energized, I hope you find it here. If you seek an hour to relax and get away from a busy world, we invite you to silence any devices that may disturb the relaxation and allow yourself to just be for a little while. Welcome, one and all. I want to extend a special welcome to someone you might recognize. Reverend Schmitz is an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister. She describes herself as an eco-humanist who is strongly influenced by Buddhist practice and teaching. She has served congregations in Massachusetts, Texas, Miami, and Orlando, and she has a passion for interfaith work. She is a longtime environmentalist and advocate for justice. She is semi-retired, and when she is not off visiting grandchildren, Reverend Kathy resides in Orlando with her husband, Terrence. Welcome back, Reverend Kathy. We've developed a weekly ritual to address happenings in our personal lives. We choose stones to represent thoughts and feelings and place them with intentionality. First, I'll place a stone for all of our joys we've experienced this week. Then I'll place one for our sorrows. And finally, I will place a stone for an intention that you have for the coming weeks. Today, I light our chalice with these words by Katie Covey. Here is what I've discovered. Intention is different from setting goals or resolutions in that it pulls us into who we truly are. Goals and resolutions push us out into future possibilities. To set intentions, we must listen to our inner voice, which tells us who we truly are. Our opening song will be number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
Love will guide us, peace has dried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can hear from deep within you. You can change the world.
Good morning. Good morning. It's great to be with you again. This morning, I'd like to begin with a story from long ago and far away. It takes place in India about 250 years before the Common Era. That's about 250 years after the historical Buddha and about 250 years before Jesus of Nazareth. It's the story of Ashoka, an emperor. He was powerful and bloodthirsty and greedy, particularly when it came to the expansion of his empire. Ashoka was also very unhappy. Our story takes place on a battlefield after one of his campaigns of expansion. 100,000 had been killed. As he walked through the carnage, Ashoka was horrified at what he had caused. Tradition tells us that just then, a Buddhist monk came walking across the battlefield. As one writer, Sharon Salzberg, put it, the monk did not say a word, but his being was radiant with happiness and peace. Seeing the monk, Ashoka thought, why is it that I, having everything in the world, feel so miserable, whereas this monk, who has nothing in the world apart from his robes and the bowl he carries, looks so serene and happy in this terrible place? Ashoka followed the monk and asked him how this came to be, and the monk introduced him to the path he followed, and Ashoka's heart was changed. We are told again by Sharon Salzberg that after this, Ashoka stopped waging imperialistic wars. He no longer allowed people to go hungry. He transformed himself from a tyrant into one of history's most respected rulers, acclaimed for thousands of years as just and benevolent. It has been suggested that Ashoka's children helped to spread the teachings, and that without this, the world might not have access to Buddhist philosophy today. Throughout time and across lands, we have voices that have encouraged us to consider the intent and impact of our words and deeds. From India, we now travel to 12th century Italy, where we find our invitation to meditation. We find it in the words of the Christian mystic Giovanni di Pietro de Bernardone, now known as St. Francis of Assisi. In the silence following each of these well-known phrases, I invite you to reflect on how you can let hope more deeply into your life. Take a breath and open your heart. God, Spirit of life, love, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there's hatred, I may sow love. That where there is wrong, the spirit of forgiveness. Where there is discord, harmony. Where there is error, truth. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there are shadows, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Grant that I may not so much seek to be comforted as to comfort, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. Let us be together in a shared silence, which will be followed by a musical interpretation of St. Francis's words. We are told that the radiance of one Buddhist monk inspired an emperor and is still impacting the world today. Person's serenity changed the course of history. In this month, in our nation, we celebrate another person who changed the course of history. We honor the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We'll hear much about his words and deeds. For so many of us, he is a great font of inspiration. I know that Reverend Jim will be talking about Dr. King next week, so today I just want to lift up one aspect of King's teachings and put it in a larger context. We often remember Dr. King's dream, yet we're also called to remember his sometimes scathing critique on the conditions of his day. It was critical that Dr. King was willing to name the injustice, and it was critical that King could articulate another possibility, the dream. King put before us a map. We are here and we need to go there. But King did more. King told us how to get from here to there. We are here and we need to get there, and here's how to do it. He said, there is something I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads to the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. We are in a difficult place, King told us, but there is another place, a place to which we can travel together, and together we can take the high road to get there. I want to talk about that high road. I want to talk about that road articulated by King and so many who came before him. As Unitarian Universalists, we draw on many sources for inspiration and wisdom. And one rich source that we draw on is those who have taken up the challenge of this life before us. Okay, so we have a source. You're familiar with the sources. They follow our principles in our bylaws, the Unitarian Universalist bylaws. The second source says that we draw on the words and deeds of prophetic people to challenge us to confront the powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Whenever I read these words, the King is one of the prophetic people I think of. I'd like to focus on an important lesson that Dr. King can teach us about opening our hearts and our minds to the vast and wonderful sources of inspiration in our world today. Because let's not forget that while he was and is inspiring, MLK was also inspired. King found inspiration in others. We are inspired by the words and deeds of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But you know, Dr. King was not a Unitarian Universalist. He was a Baptist. But King also drew inspiration from those who came before him. Jesus of Nazareth, no doubt, but also Mohandas K. Gandhi, a Christian, drew inspiration from Gandhi because, you know, Gandhi wasn't a Baptist or a Christian or a Unitarian Universal. He was a Hindu. And Gandhi also drew inspiration from those who came before him. He treasured the scripture of his own tradition, especially the Bhagavad Gita. He also read Christian scripture and is said to have been particularly fond of the Sermon on the Mount. Gandhi was also inspired when he read the writings of Henry David Thoreau. Thoreau, by the way, not a Hindu, not a Baptist. He was a transcendentalist. He hung out with the Unitarians of his day. And who did Thoreau read? Well, he was among the first Americans who were reading the first translations of texts from India and other places in Asia. Thoreau was strongly influenced by the teachings of Buddhism. And why was Thoreau able to read the teachings of Buddhism? As we heard just a moment ago, the Buddhist teachings were spread by the children of the Indian Emperor Ashoka after his battlefield transformation. A transformation that caused him to change his rule from one of violence to one of justice and benevolence. All as a result of seeing a single Buddhist monk as being radiant with peace and happiness. This is a long list of people from different times and places and traditions, people with so much in common, people with a desire and an intention to spread peace and justice, a desire and an intention to end violence and suffering. And these people shared a willingness to find inspiration and wisdom in the words and the deeds of those who came before them. They shared a commitment to learn from others so that their intention was translated into impact. In all times and places and traditions, there are those who would spread peace and justice. There are those who would end violence and suffering. Big names like Buddha and Jesus and Thoreau and Gandhi and King, and nameless monks wandering across a battlefield. Revolutionary teachers, Buddhists, Christians, Hindus, Transcendentalists, and more. People whose hearts were big enough to understand, to truly understand that the only way to bring peace and love and justice into our lives is to bring peace and love and justice into the lives of all people. As we do the work for peace and justice and love, may we each in our own way open our hearts so that we may be inspired and in turn live our lives so that we may be inspiring. You and me and our neighbors and our friends, we can be the ones. We can be the ones to inspire someone who inspires someone who inspires someone. We can be like the nameless monk, And in what way shall we inspire one another? Well, as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Only love. I would suggest that the jewel handed down across the centuries can be well described by looking at the Buddhist teaching of loving kindness. In the Buddhist tradition, this is called metta, M-E-T-T-A. Metta is a word from the ancient language Pali in which the Buddhist texts were first recorded. Metta is usually translated as love or loving kindness. Metta means to hope for and to work for the well-being of all. I want to spend minutes on this concept, as I think it is meant in this context. I often get confused because the word love is used in so many different ways in our language and our. We get confused, but it's important, this concept of love. Love as it is meant on the path that we're talking about, this path to spread love and justice, on this path to help end violence and suffering. In her book titled Loving Kindness, American Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg, from whom our earlier story about Ashoka came, she explains the confusion. She says, in our culture, when we talk about love, we usually mean either passion or sentimentality. It's crucial to distinguish metta from both of these states. About passion, she writes, and check and see if this matches your experience. Passion is enmeshed with feelings of desire, of wanting, or of owning and possessing. Passion gets entangled with needing things to be a certain way, with having our expectations met. Salzberg notes, it is not a coincidence that the word passion derives from the Latin word for suffering. Wanting and expectation inevitably entail suffering. This is passion. Salzberg explains that metta is something different. She continues, by contrast, the spirit of metta is unconditional, open, and unobstructed. A friend may disappoint us. She may not meet our expectation, but we do not stop being a friend to her. We may, in fact, disappoint ourselves, may not meet our own expectations, but we do not cease to be friends with ourselves. Salzberg then turns her attention to the other area of confusion, sentimentality. Here she writes, sentimentality, the other mental state that masquerades as love, is like looking through the lens of a camera that has been smeared with a little Vaseline. Sentimentality puts things into what is called soft focus. We cannot see the rough edges, the trouble spots, or the defects. Everything is just too nice. Sentimentality finds pain unbearable and so rejects it. End quote. Metta, Salzberg explains, is not about clouding the truth, but about seeing it clearly. It is the practice of continually opening ourselves up. And she tells us, when we practice metta, we open continually to the truth of our actual experience, changing our relationship to life. Metta, the sense of that is not bound to desire, that does not have to pretend that things are other than they are, overcomes the illusion of separateness, of not being part of the whole. So I wonder, can we be that open? Can we be willing to see clearly and yet stay connected without clinging? Can we allow ourselves to be inspired by greater understanding? Some will say it's a tall order. Yes, it is. That's why we are here, and the world we wish to see is there. The road between here and there is hard. That is why after a millennia of human civilization, we are here and not there. Yes, the road is hard, but as far as I can see, it's the only way to get from here to there. This is the message that we have received over and over again. The words and the deeds of prophetic people challenge us to confront the powers and structures of evil, yes, to confront them with justice, compassion, and that transforming power of love. The end of loving kindness, its goal and hopeful result, is the creation of the world we wish to see. If this is our goal, if our goal is the world with more peace and justice, and our path is loving kindness, how are we to get on that path? Well, for one thing, we don't get on the path by simply listening to the great voices of the past, or holding them up, or even worshiping them. We get on a path by following them down it. All the names we recall, surely they were important in their time. Without a doubt, their message is still important today, and yet they did not change the world by themselves. The changes they helped to bring about came about because people allowed themselves to be inspired. Things changed because people, everyday people like you, like me, took a step from here onto the path that leads to there. You and me and our neighbors and our friends, we are the ones who will make a difference in the world. How we live our lives matters. It matters deeply. If we desire to spread peace and justice, if we desire to end violence and suffering, if this is our end, then our path is loving kindness. And it is a tall order. It is true that the path is hard. Sharon Salzberg gives us these words to encourage us on the path. She reminds us that beginning again and again in love is what we will need to do. Beginning over and over and over again. Quoting from Salzberg one last time. Be patient with yourself in this practice. And try not to hold rigid expectations of what you should be experiencing. When we have rigid expectations, we can feel a great sense of helplessness if those expectations are not quickly met. We see our actions as being fruitless and not going anywhere. Remember that whatever anger, fear, or sorrow arises will pass away. And we can always return to the intention to care for ourselves and all beings. Beginning again and again is the actual practice, not a problem to overcome. Loving kindness is a high road. It's a hard road. Still, it is a road that has been pointed to by prophetic people for millennia, and it is pointed to still. It is a hard road, and we will stumble on our way, but do not despair. We can always return to the intention to care for ourselves and all beings. Beginning again and again is the actual practice, not a problem to overcome. We have a dream of more hope, more peace, more love, more joy, a dream we can follow one step at a time, beginning again and again, every day, every moment, in love. May it be so.
Okay, our hymn today will be number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing when our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Thank you, Dee. That was beautiful. Now we have this congregation can thrive with your help. I invite you to give what you can to support this community. Go to uutampa.org where you can find the address if you want to mail a check, or you can donate online directly from the website. Thank you. Okay. I thank you for choosing to spend some time with us. I hope you found something that will make your week just a little better somehow. Our hope for you is that the coming days are filled with kindness, wisdom, and love. Please stay tuned on this Zoom link after the service so you can get your own cup of coffee and have some conversation with our friends. I'll extinguish the chalice with a quote from Buddha. When you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky. Thank you all.